Here we are. Hey, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to my show, William Wallace for America. As you know, I absolutely love not only bringing on things about America and especially elected officials and talking about community and what elected officials do in certain positions. And the list goes on and on and on. It's really about all things America and things that are affecting our laws that we're governed by in particular. Speaking of which, today I'm bringing on a U.S. Senate candidate from Ohio, Mark Pukita. That's who's with me today. Mark Pukita, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Did I say the last name right?
Yeah, you got it. Pukita. Perfect.
Pukita.
Perfect, Bill.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Well, no, you're welcome. What I like to do, especially, and this came up last night. I was speaking last night at an event, and one of my listeners, she's listening today. She'll know I'm talking about her. She said, I really like how you interview candidates in such a way that we get to know them as a person. And I think that's one of the best things that we can do when somebody's running. Is the best time to know somebody is when they're running, because once they get elected, it's hard to get to know them as a person.
Right.
And this is one of those most crucial times. And so that's why, I wanted to bring you on a little bit. Is there anything you want to say before I start asking you questions?
No, I mean, I'm glad to answer your questions. I mean, we can dive right into those. I'm glad to tell you my background, whatever you'd like to, however you'd like to make it.
Let's start with your background. That's a good segue. So, let's tell us about yourself.
So, I was raised a lower middle class kid. My grandfathers were both coal miners in northeastern Pennsylvania. My parents grew up without houses when they were younger. They didn't go to college. When they graduated from high school, they went to work. I was raised in a faith-based family. Sunday was the was the pinnacle of our week, right?
Right, exactly.
I like to tell people, I remember like Saturday nights were always baths or showers, and then Sunday morning I was in a suit and tie, from the time that I was old enough to remember. And I hated wearing a suit and tie then, and I hate it now, Bill. So to run for office, I had to go buy 3 suits, right? I had to buy a few new suits. I had a wedding suit and a funeral suit, and I needed a few more. So I had to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I love dressing up, but I tell you what, I'm most comfortable in just a button down and some jeans and some boots, and that's some of my favorites. So what part of Ohio are we talking? Northern Ohio, Southern Ohio? Where are you?
So I'm in Dublin, Ohio, which is a northwest suburb of Columbus. So right in the middle of the state. And I came here in '96 from the East Coast, right? So I came to go to school at Ohio State, and I fell in love with Ohio and stayed. It was very different than the East Coast where I was raised, and I liked it. So that's why I'm here. I've been here.
You're a transplant.
I'm a transplant, but
which is a story in itself, because if you stayed there, you love Ohio. It's kind of like when people come to Louisiana, they stay here. That gets in their blood. They don't want to leave.
Right. It was the same way. It was, I've got to be honest, it's the people here, right? We talk about Midwest friendly or Midwest nice. I think it's true. And we've got a great state. We've got a state that has even more potential than is being being actualized or realized right now. And while I'm running for federal office, I certainly am going to be representing Ohio, and I think we can make Ohio great again, if you want to use a Trump term. Yeah,
nothing wrong with that term.
Yeah,
it's a very positive term to try to make it, to keep the country moving.
Yeah, I tell the story in some of my one of my campaign events. It's like, think about Donald Trump sitting there and saying, "Wow, MAGA, CAG, keep America great, make America great again." He probably thought, I can't understand why people got so excited about that, right? I sat here at my desk eating my taco salad, and I thought about that. That wasn't as hard as building a hotel. That wasn't as hard as building and managing a casino. And when you think about it, they're very simple, but they got to the heart of the matter. We were losing the American kind of mantra of, we're great. We do great things. We do good around the world. We're a force against evil. And yeah, I just thank God he showed up when he did.
Mhm.
But I think he's probably thinking that was not that hard, right? That was just common sense. It was pretty easy. He didn't even break a sweat doing that. I'm sure he breaks a sweat building hotels, right?
I like how you say common sense, because I think part of the problem with common sense is it's not too common these days,
Right.
particularly in elected office and particularly in DC. I did a podcast the other day where I talked about how, people are just too busy between, soccer practice and their jobs and paying their bills and cleaning their house, when the house that really needs to be cleaned is the one in DC. And,
Correct.
all the houses, in there. And that's why I think we need more people that are just regular down the earth people like yourself running for office. And I'm not trying to, point the finger at you and say more good people like you, because I think from what I've heard and what I want people to learn today about you is for them to see for themselves, if you're that good person
Right.
that can just, bring some common sense back to elected office. So what do you do anyway?
So let me tell you a little bit about my story and why I'm running, but you'll get an answer to the question of
Right.
what I do. In October of 2019, I sold a business that I had been building for over 20 years. And I realized I lived the American dream. The interesting part about that was, though, I didn't realize I lived the American dream until I'd already done it. When, the numbers are the contracts are done,
Right.
money's flowing into
Yeah.
accounts, and I could say, hey, I'm worth more than my parents. And they were worth more than their parents, right? They lived the American dream. But, their job wasn't as hard as mine, because their fathers were coal miners, and they died long before I was born because they worked themselves to death. I mean, my mom's dad died at
Right.
age 6 from black lung, right? So I lived the
They're
American
coal
dream.
miners.
Coal miners, yeah.
Yeah.
And I realized I lived the American dream, and I'm FaceTiming with my daughter and my then 17-month-old, year and 5-month-old grandson, and I thought that child will not have the same opportunity to live the American dream I did if we keep going in the same direction. And that got me thinking about Rob Portman, our current senator who's decided not to run, whose seat I'm going for.
So
And
this
I
is
thought
an open seat.
it will be an open seat. He's lame duck. He's decided
Right.
not to run. I say he quit. People say he retired. He would have run again, Bill, but there was no way he was going to get reelected, because he went to
Right.
Washington and he didn't do anything that we sent him to Washington to do. That's another story.
Yeah.
So I decided to run because I don't know if you're a grandfather or not,
No.
but the minute you hold a grandchild, your entire life changes. Your perspective on life changes. And some of it's great, most of it's great, but some of it's also, hey, I'm mortal, right? Like I've got
Right.
this next generation. And I was thinking, I'm going to be 63 here in a few weeks. If you think about living to, like, let's say 90 years old, you have these 3 trimesters, if you will, in your life. You want through 0 through 30, birth through 30, 30 through 60, 60 through 90. So I'm in that last trimester. And I'm thinking to myself, when it came to running, I'm thinking there's nothing more important I can do for my grandchildren. And even if it is absolutely debilitating and I've got to literally lay my life down for them, I have a lot less to lose, right? I'm on that last, that last third. They've got so much to experience. They've got their entire lives to experience.
Right.
And so that's what really drove me to want to run and do this, because, we're monetizing our debt. We're printing money so fast that we're rapidly becoming Venezuela. I mean, think about it. We've got hyperinflation right now.
Right.
It's not Venezuela inflation, but it could get there. And they can't get toilet paper, and neither can we, right? I mean, when you think about what we're going through right now, it's kind of like a taste. It's an appetizer of socialism. And I don't know about you, but I don't see any good in it right now.
I worry every day, about what's happening, because when you sit here and look at this and you look and look, what's interesting, let me start by saying this. What's really sad is that I have a lot of smart friends. Not It's not sad that I have smart friends. What's sad about all these smart friends I have is that many of them just say, "Oh, that's that conspiracy stuff." When you start talking about election integrity, Venezuela, stolen elections, hyperinflation, oh, that's all that conspiracy stuff. Life is good. We're making good livings. Hey, we're making more money, right? Things are costing more because they just kind of manipulate around. And some of these are really smart people that I know that are Republican minded people.
Yeah.
And you listen to this and everybody ignores it while it's happening because there's been a twist that, oh, this is a good thing. There's a and we know it's not, and it's inflation's not a good thing. Printing money is not a good thing. Debt is not a good thing. Now, don't get me wrong, a little debt is a good thing. And the United States has the ability to borrow some money in a way that it helps our economy. And I'm not going to be an economist there, and I'm not going to explain it the right way, but you kind of know where I'm going with that.
Right.
But to keep adding debt in the trillions of dollars gets to an unsustainable amount that we're not going to be able to afford. Our kids aren't going to be able to afford it. And it's going to be at the cost of our grandchildren's freedoms. So back to your point, that's exactly why you're doing this. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I try not to be ideological on my show. People know where I stand. They know that I have conservative values, but they also realize that when I talk to people, I try to bring out a lot of information so people can just be more informed. And that's why I like to have these long talks with candidates, because they often have good pieces of information. So,
right. So I've thought, you know what? We need to get Dave Ramsey. You know Dave Ramsey?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
We need to get Dave Ramsey to write a book on a money makeover for the federal government.
Oh, that'd be great.
Right. Because we need to spend less.
Mm-hmm.
We need to pay down the debt. I mean, think about this. What would happen if the dollar got replaced by another currency as the world's reserve currency? Think about what that would mean. If we aren't trading, for example, oil in dollars on the major exchanges around the world, if we're not trading other commodities in dollars around the world, the ability for that other currency manipulator, China probably,
right,
to really use that reserve currency status as a weapon against us and everybody else in the world could be it could be a staggering blow. It could be almost like nuclear weapons, right? Because you can control everything with that money: food, clothing, shelter, you name it, right?
Well, we're already looking at supply chain shortages, with all these ships there. Of course, it's to our own demise that a lot of our stuff that we're buying from is coming from China. And now all those same boats are stuck out in the Atlantic and elsewhere that can't bring the supplies in. So we're already on a limited supply. And again, this is one of those, air quote here, conspiracy minded things that I'll have Republican friends say, oh, that's that conspiracy stuff again. China's never going to take over the currency. Well, if they have the supply chain and they have an advantage over us financially speaking, we don't have bargaining power. Whether it's actually going to happen, has the possibility of happening, just the fact that we can think about having that situation used against us is opportunity for us to fix the problem. This much debt is not good. This much inflation is not good. So this is an opportunity to be a wake-up call, if you will, a clarion call, and that's why I'm assuming you're running to do that. Let me interrupt you for 1 second too. What business were you in for 20 years?
So I started in 1996 an IT staffing business, right?
Okay.
So I'm a technology guy. I got an engineering degree, an electrical engineering degree at Ohio State, and then I went to work in sales for companies like IBM and EDS, and then worked for some smaller companies and started my own company. It grew to about $100 million in revenue, 800 employees. Over that 20 years, we employed thousands of people. So I'm technology minded. I'm also business minded. So when I look at what goes on in DC, I think that you couldn't keep a business in
Right.
business for
Exactly.
a week, maybe not even a day, running it the way that government is run. And I think we need more business people there. Does everybody need to be a business person there? No. But we need some people that have experience running and building strategy and executing plans to accomplish that strategy and the objectives of that strategy. We need some people who have done that. I mean, if you look at the people in DC, their majority of them are career politicians who have had little or no experience in what I call the real world, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we need. And I've never run for office before, as I said. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I ran a business, and I want to be able to do like Donald Trump did. I think what Donald Trump taught us is you can take sound business management principles, apply them to governing, and have a massive impact fast, right? When I hear politicians talk about, well, it's going to take us a few election cycles to do that. Election cycles. Okay, so election cycles are what? 2, 4, 6 years. That's ridiculous, right? In business,
that's the epitome of
you're talking cycles of 30 days, a week, or a day, even, right?
Yeah. And what you're talking about, election cycles, that's the epitome of kicking the can down the road.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what they're doing. And again, we go back to this business-minded individual, or business-minded people doing better being in office. And you're right. We don't need all business people in office, but we need to be some people who are at least thinking about their fiduciary responsibility to the people of our country.
Correct.
What I get tired of hearing every time there's a shutdown or a threat of a shutdown, or we need to raise the debt limit. I love when they said this last week or 2 weeks ago. We need to raise the debt limit so the government can pay their bills. Think about this. If a business went to the bank every year and said, I need to borrow more money so I can pay my bills, you'd be shut down. You'd be out of business. The bank would eventually say, no, you can't keep borrowing money to pay your bills. If you're not paying your bills off of what you're bringing in, you're going to be out of business. And it's common sense, but that's the problem with common sense. It's not too common in DC.
Right. And I mean, so here are what I've found to be the three biggest problems with our tax code: spending, spending, and spending. People talk about we need to change the tax code. We need to work, we need a more progressive tax. We need a flat tax and all the rest. I'm not against retooling our tax code, but we've got to spend less, right?
Right.
The tax code and the tax laws and the tables and the rates mean a lot less, are less significant if we're spending less, right? We did some calculations last week. My campaign team did. We were just like sitting around talking about this issue. We would have to raise taxes across the board for everybody 50% from where they are today to balance the budget. Okay. And I thought, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do a temporary tax hike that requires, that we collect enough taxes to balance the budget. I'm willing to bet you that if most Americans saw what it would take to balance the budget with tax increases, they would be on the phone, on their phone, on email, or driving to Columbus, driving to DC to demand that we stop spending money.
Well, and you're exactly right. If people really, if it really hit them in the wallet instead of going into their wallet, they'd probably wake up a lot quicker. And that's the problem. A lot of people don't realize. And I even think that, and I'm gonna ask you a question. I would probably ask you again at the end. Actually, I'll ask you a couple questions a second time, because I see it as an opportunity to get more information from what I'm hearing. But it goes, one of my last questions for you is, what's going to keep you from becoming one of them if you get elected? And I'm gonna explain it this way. We always see, in these spending bills, there's the bridge to nowhere, or there's this program, and we know where it's coming from. It's some senator or some congressman has some project that he says, look, my project's only going to cost $1 billion, or my project's only going to cost $25 million. It's a drop in the bucket compared to this $3 trillion spending bill, but I need it to get reelected. And if I get reelected, I can vote for your bill when you bring up, Bill XYZ next year. And we know what happens. We hear about it. We ignore it. We let it go. What's going to keep you from becoming one of those guys? Because again, it's that little bitty budget in each congressman's, interest. And then you add that up amongst the 400 people we have in Congress and our 100 senators, and before we know it, we have a $3 trillion spending bill. What keeps you from being one of those people?
It's just who I am, and it's my background, right? So it really does come down to trusting that I'll do what I say I'm going to do.
So you would be a more principled person, elected official on spending than an ideological one.
Correct. So here's what I would tell you. I'm going to be 63 in a few weeks. I'll be 64 when elected, right? So it'll take me to like 70 when I'm done with one term. I don't really want to run for re-election. I'm not doing this because it was on my bucket list. I'm doing this because I'm righteously angry. Everybody says, oh, you say you're angry, or you sound so angry. Well, I am angry, right? I'm angry that someone is trying to take the future away from my grandsons. It started out a grandson, and in the interim, it's been grandsons. And so I've told people, listen, I'm going to serve, not prosper. I should be able to do a good enough job in 6 years that if you want to reelect me and I want to be reelected, I shouldn't really have to run that much. I shouldn't have to raise much money or any money.
Right.
I don't want to do that. I'm not doing that now. I'm trying to do this on a shoestring. I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm financially able to do that, but I'm not putting $10 million in. And I'm putting, $100,000 in or $200,000 in because we got to get the money out of politics. But that aside, I'm not interested. I'm probably one of the few candidates that wants to go to Washington and make my job while I'm there smaller, meaning we reduce the size of the federal government. And in my mind, even if we can do 1% a year, that would be an absolute victory. If we could find a way to get legislation in place that required us to reduce our budget by 1% a year, that would be a huge victory. People say, oh, it's got to be more. And honestly, I used to say it should be more. But then I thought about, in reality, is it possible to do that? And I don't think it is. But if we can get a percentage, like, when was the last time our budget went down at all? It's been decades, right? But actually, I'm not sure it's ever happened. I'm sure it has after wars and things like that. But I mean, kind of the regular operating expenses of the government, if we could get them down 1% a year, and you think about that, 10 years, 10%, 20 years, 20%. And I also think it would get people thinking in the mindset of value for money. Because think of us, we as citizens, right? We are the board of directors, right? We get to vote who, comes in. We're customers of the organization. And we're also shareholders in the organization, right? We're everything. And if we started thinking more about that, like, how do I get value for the money? Like if you think about paying 50% more in taxes, do you really think you're going to get 50% more in value if you did that?
What I like your way of thinking here, and you gave me a thought that I wanted to share first, is that if our elected officials worked in terms of, like you said, reducing the budget by 1%, cutting our debt by 1% in a small incremental fashion, Okay. And then they concentrate their efforts on freedom, liberty, fiscally conservative policies, not ideologies, not lifestyles, just focused on conservative minded, fiscally conservative minded agendas, and promoted capitalism, supported the free market, not by intervening in it, not by creating rules that make some businesses have advantages over other businesses, some markets, having advantages over other markets, but by creating a free market system, or supporting, I'll say, I said it the wrong way first, supporting a free market system and supporting capitalism in a way where our economy grew naturally, our businesses did better, our people would do better. We watched our budgets go down, we watched our debt go down. Our country would be better off without all the programs that they sneak in at the final hour on these spending bills that are costing us so much money. Not even us, they're going to cost our grandkids all the money.
Right. So I think what you're talking about is we've got to get the crony capitalism out of capitalism.
I love it. Yeah, exactly.
Right. We've got to get the special interest loopholes and things like I think it's ridiculous that hedge funds have this carried interest deduction. If anybody can afford to pay taxes, whether it be regular income or capital gains income, it's the people who are running hedge funds, right? We've got to make it so everybody is playing by the same rules.
Right.
And if we do that, right, and we make sure people are paying their taxes and they're not getting out, I look at capitalism like we need to have a level playing field. We need to have a level playing field in the United States with our own businesses and entrepreneurs. We need more entrepreneurs. And then we need a level playing field internationally, right? We are not playing on a level playing field, for example, with China. You know it, I know it, Trump knew it, everybody knows
exactly.
it, right? If we level that playing field, make the rules the same for everybody, and make that integrity of our system sacrosanct, we can do the kind of things you're talking about, right? Because if we promote entrepreneurialism, think about this. We promote entrepreneurialism. More people start businesses, less people are dependent on the government.
Right.
More people start businesses and they need people to work for them. Less people are dependent on the government.
Right.
This is a self-righting mechanism. Capitalism and free markets, like you said, I'm a big believer in capitalism and free markets, because if you look at virtually any problem we've got, if you look at it from a capitalism or a free markets perspective, the solution almost rises to the top like cream on whole milk.
No, you got exactly where I was going with it. And furthermore, I understand how we've had law after law, piggyback on different laws, added to a law, all these different laws that change other laws. Of course, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but the idea being is we've kind of added all these splints, if you will, all these handicaps, if you will, in our capitalistic society that other businesses come in later and hire lobbyists because they need a little bit of an advantage for a certain thing that might help them out a little bit more. Where if we just focused on raw capitalism and created an environment where all businesses can prosper without tons of government regulation, and I don't mean unregulate in a way that we're not going to have an EPA or a DEQ or an OSHA. I mean, I understand there's a need for those organizations, to kind of keep some things in check, but where we had a more free society and where businesses could prosper, create that environment, we create a system where people are less dependent on the government.
Right. And you're right. Some regulation is good. We've got to keep the car, if you will, between the lines, but we don't need to have someone driving the car for us, right? We've got 175,000 pages of legislation or regulations in the United States. in the federal government. Often those regulations in a department or an agency conflict with one another. That's insane. Where an agency is contradicting itself regularly with these regulations, and that's what Donald Trump did, right? When he started that nation effort. I mean, he didn't even scratch the surface, and I think it had huge benefits. Think if we went at that, like, and we looked at every single page of that 175,000 pages of regulation, clean them up, and got government out of the way. That doesn't mean we're not going to look at safety. That doesn't mean we're not going to look at environmental malfeasance or labor malfeasance or whatever. But we have tied the hands of capitalists and free marketers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when we're competing on an unleveled playing field with China, with India, with Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, we could go down the list where we've literally given up our middle class to them, and we need to get those regulations out of the way to bring manufacturing back, make it attractive, make it cost effective to do it here. And that will rebuild our middle class. I mean, and then we need to retool education, right? Because everybody says we need more like trades and blue collar education. I don't like to look at it that way. Right, I think that we need to have education that allows young people to learn and prosper, to take the gifts that God has given them, whether it's intelligence, whether it's physical capability, whether it's it's fine motor skills or whatever it is.
Build our trade schools back.
Yeah. Well, we could do that, but I wouldn't say, oh, we're just going to build the trade schools back and everybody should go to a trade school. We should build our education system so it helps deliver to our market what we need and at the highest and best use for these people, right? Our citizens, our young people. Right now, our institutions of higher learning in great part are producing great, highly educated fast food workers, right? Because they're not, we've heard the jokes about things like, they study lesbian dance theory or something like that. That's kind of over the top, but really some of these degrees are absolutely worthless.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. It's these degrees that are engineered or designed to appeal to a group of individuals that they need to create as a voting block.
Right.
And that's how I look at it. Right. But I want to interrupt for one more second to say, because when I'm out and about at public events, I get a lot of people that watch my show. They give me feedback and they'll say, hey, I like when you said this. I like when you said that. And one of the things that I like to point out, because there's a lot of people that are smarter than me that I meet. And I'm actually proud of that because I like to surround myself with people that are smarter than me.
Right.
Because that's the only way that I learn how to do things better. And sometimes they'll say, hey, when you said this, I like the fact that we are brainstorming here, that we're not, we don't have necessarily the right answers or the perfect answers, but I like to say this. I might not say it the right way. You might not say it the right way, but I know that we are giving people an inside look at what our intentions, what's in our heart, what's on our conscience, which is to do the right thing for people.
Right.
And the answer might not be exactly what we're talking about downsizing this or creating this. But when you see the sentiment of the value of that thought or that sentiment, then people will see, hey, this is somebody that I know is going to guide us in a direction of freedom, free market, capitalism, improve our society, through creating more jobs. And they get that feeling, that comfort of knowing this is somebody that has good intentions in their heart. What if you had a thought?
I was going to say, here is my perspective on this whole topic. I have always viewed this topic we're talking about, business and jobs and education, from an abundance mentality perspective, not a scarcity mentality. people who think with a scarcity mentality, I kind of look at it as a pie, right? They look at a pie and they say, that's the world, and I've got to get the biggest piece of the pie that I can. And to get the biggest piece of the pie, I'll have to take pieces of that pie, slices of that pie from other people. I tend to look at it as, you got a 12-inch pie. Let's find a way to make the pie 14 inches. Let's find the way to make the pie 16 inches, right? Because entrepreneurs do that, right? Entrepreneurs move into spaces that no one occupies, right? Or they move into a space in an industry that might even be mature, like mine was, but do it in a different way. So they occupy a different niche in that space, and we think of what we're going through right now. We are absolutely fighting each other over stupid stuff.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. If we got back to thinking about America's great, American can be greater, freedom is great, liberty is great, I can do what I want, I can achieve whatever I set my mind to, and we get the impediments out of the way, we could be living in the Garden of Eden, right? We seriously could, if we got the corruption out of the way, if we got the crony capitalism out of the way. I mean, I have a very optimistic view. I've always had a very optimistic view of both life and our country, and it grieves me. I'm grieving over the fact that more people don't understand that what we have here is special. Okay, it is really special. If you've traveled around the world like I have, and you've seen many other countries, there is nothing that compares to the United States. We're the least racist. We're the most generous. We're the most innovative. We're the most caring. Mm-hmm. I can go down the list. And I wish that more people traveled out of the United States. And I'm not talking about on a cruise ship and stopping in the Bahamas for a day. I'm talking about, like, I've been out in the hinterlands outside of Moscow in Russia. I was in Hong Kong literally months after they were repatriated. China took Hong Kong back from the British. And here's what I would tell you. I'm getting up.
Japan?
Hong Kong.
Okay.
Hong Kong to China. I'm sorry. To China. Did I say, I'm sorry. I was getting a suit made, right? Everybody gets a suit made. $300, you get a custom made suit. Everybody's got to do it in Hong Kong. And I'm talking to the tailors about, how do you feel about being part of China again? And here's what they did. Within months, they were scared of the communist Chinese. They were afraid to talk about their life and how they felt with the change of Great Britain leaving, the UK leaving, and China coming in. I don't think many Americans don't understand this. Many Americans don't understand how great we have it here. They take it for granted, and I just think that's a shame.
What part of all this ignited your passion to run? We've talked about a lot of things, though. What was the biggest thing that ignited your passion to run?
I honestly think it was the life-changing event of having grandchildren, realizing I'm mortal. I'm in the last third of my life, and I'd lay down my life for those kids, right? And realizing that someone was trying to get in the way of my grandchildren achieving everything and anything they desired, right? Because I was able to do that, and I know it's possible. And people are trying to take that away from them, take their freedom away, take their liberty away, take their independence away by making them dependent on the government. That just wasn't acceptable to me. And then when I saw that our representatives, honestly, I was getting tired of being treated like I was stupid by everybody in Washington, right? And I'm not stupid. I think you could figure that out. I know, which side the bread is buttered on. You do too. But we get treated like we're imbeciles by people in DC.
Right.
And in fact, it's the other way around.
How could you not think it's smart for us to borrow this money?
Right.
With your name?
Right. Exactly. It's the other way around. It's like, and they're like, oh, you don't understand. No, actually, I do understand. Right. You're ineffective. Yeah. You don't understand. You're not competent. And think about that. Business people are constantly. I used to say to my staff, they would say, "Oh, we're worried about a recession, and we're worried about this, and we're worried about competition." I'd say, listen, my job, I look at it as my job to keep you from ever having to see, think about, or experience that stuff. My job is to look around corners for the bad guys
Right.
and think about how I keep them from coming around the corner so we have to face them. It's called proactivity,
Mhm.
right? When was the last time we did anything proactive in the United States? We're always reactive. Let me ask you this question. How long have we been talking about having a national energy policy?
Not enough, but go ahead.
We've been talking about it since Jimmy Carter days with the lines for gas, right? We have never had a national energy policy, even though we've talked about it, even though gas prices have been up and gone down. Donald Trump really had a de facto national energy policy. And his policy was very simple, but very, very commonsensical, very doable. We are going to be energy independent, right? That was his policy. No one, it's like make America great, keep America great. He probably
It's almost like we were headed in the direction well, we were, energy independent, and we were headed in the right direction on an energy level, like you're saying, and and Biden just turned it off, literally turned the spigot off,
why and
which
why.
was
Yeah.
I
The
because
bigger question is why. Why do you think he did that?
well, I could guess a lot of reasons. One, it gives the Middle East more control, gives more control back to China, gives more control. We can go hypothetical on all those all we want, but most importantly, I think it speaks to the environmentalist. I think he doesn't want the environmentalists to feel like wants them to feel like he's on their side.
Right.
But
How about making more Americans dependent on the government by having less money in their pocket and needing services and things like that from the government?
exactly.
Is that too conspiracy theorist
No,
theorists?
no. As a matter of fact, it's also puts more people out of business.
Right.
It hurts small businesses.
Right.
So the same people that he claims don't want to help, or the Democrat party wants to help, are the same people that get hurt by these energy agendas to either, reduce our energy or make energy prices higher. Not that they're intentionally doing that, wink wink, but their policies do it. Of course, I don't know whether it's always intentional or it's just sheer stupidity. It's there's always that guess. Are they doing these? Are they creating these policies that hurt America because they're intentionally trying to hurt it, or are they just that stupid, or is there just a combination thereof, or are they just listening to too many people that have too many ideological philosophies?
So you probably are aware of Thomas Sowell, right?
Oh yeah, love him, love
I
him.
love Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell does this great video interview, and it's talking about his book about academics. I forget the title of the book, but he talks about how these Ivy League educated academics who've never really accomplished anything end up in Washington, and they think because they've got this just tremendous amount of knowledge on
Bachelor's, master's,
yeah
PhD,
rock formations in Ethiopia or coffee growing in Ecuador, and they've got a PhD in it, that because they're so smart and they're so renowned in that, and they can write books and get adulation from everybody else, that's transferable to every other aspect of driving and controlling everybody else's lives, because they're so smart and we're not. And he really he just tears this academic kind of elitist class apart. And I'd highly recommend the book. If I wish I could remember the name of it, in this video, because it really explains very commonsensically why we're in the situation we are today. And I think it gets back to, we've got to get career politicians out of Washington, because they're not smart enough to know that these really educated, dumb people, as Dan Bongino likes to say, are
Well,
not helping us.
they have book smarts. They just don't have common sense
Correct.
smarts. Well, they don't have the life skills. They don't have that book of the school of hard knocks.
Correct.
So, Mark, I want to go through a few questions a little quickly.
Okay.
Maybe
Okay.
we do a little bit shorter answers on some.
Okay.
I think it's important, to give some people a more feel on a different direction with you.
Okay.
We know why you're deciding why you want to run. But I want to ask you, what unites us as a country? I'm always looking for things that we can unite on. Republicans, Democrats. I always like to say I have Democrat friends, even ones that claim to be liberal, that are in some ways more conservative minded than some of my Republican friends who say they're conservatives. It's really kind of a weird example. And I even have some Republican friends who are more Democrat, more liberal than what they think they are. Right. And again, I got some of those Republican friends that are really smart in the books, but they think I'm a conspiracy theorist because I don't believe, because I think that our country suffers election integrity. But what unites us as a country? But more importantly, how can we unite more people on the principles of good government, conservative values, and responsible spending?
That's a great question. I think it comes down to talking about what made America great, what makes America great, and doing it in a way that isn't pointing fingers, isn't blaming anybody for where we are, but saying, here's where we are, here's where we could be, here's how we've done it before, and here's what the value is to you. Here's what the benefit is to you. And Donald Trump did that, right? He was very clear about the fact, and he stated this many, many times, and I think it scared the Democrats. We had the lowest Black unemployment ever. We had the lowest female unemployment ever. We had the lowest Latino unemployment ever. We had the lowest Asian unemployment ever. Wages grew for the first time in, I think, 3 decades. People started seeing that. So I think what could unite us is understanding that these cronies, these corrupt crony moochers in Washington are trying to keep, John Q. Public, like you or me, from having a better life because they want to keep us under their thumb and they want to control us. There is nothing in my business. I created probably 4 or 5 millionaires, people that I regularly was not the highest earner in my company, right? I helped create.
Oftentimes the owners aren't.
Right. Because my eye was on the end game of ultimately selling the company because I live a frugal lifestyle. Yeah. I don't need,
that's what makes you money off,
right? That's not important to me. Family's important to me. Friends are important to me. Experiences are important to me. Belongings aren't important to me. Although people say you keep stuff too long, you need to get rid of that shirt or those jeans. But seriously,
are you peeking into my closet? I mean,
yeah, you might be like,
I got shirts from high school. Okay,
yeah. My daughter will come through. She's like 30, and she has a mom, and she's like, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. It's just like, boom, 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 it's gone.
Yeah,
I'm not good at that because I kind of was raised. My parents were Depression era parent. You never threw anything away. You mended it, kept it. So I don't know. It's just one of those, kind of mental things. But let's talk about a few other issues that could unite us. Term limits. Okay. I believe it's the last poll I saw. 82% of Americans believe we should have term limits, right? I'd go to Washington. I'd present that legislation immediately and fight for it because that would unify us. 75% of Americans want voter ID, right? There are things we could do to unify the country. Now, I also think about the fact, when was the last time you really felt connected to the country? I mean, really connected, like viscerally, spiritually connected to the country.
That's a good question too. It's I can think of how I felt at 9/11. I
There
can
you
think
go.
about, but and I know that was good, was probably the most time that most people feel really connected. But I tend to try to feel very connected every day, because with my show, I do things every day to feel more connected.
Right.
But I'll let you finish your thought, because I have another question for you.
Yeah. So I was talking about connected with each other and feeling
Right.
patriotic. And, I would just say to you that we need to make patriotism cool again. I would submit that patriotism became uncool the day Barack Obama was elected. We need to get back to making patriotism, caring about the United States, cool again.
So while I don't like to talk about what divides us, I think it's important to know, so we can fight against the narratives that divide us and are destroying our nation. What are you most passionate about of fighting against? I think there's some narratives right now that are being created, that are being used to divide us, and I think one of them you fought against, and I'd like for you to tell people about that. But I didn't want to answer your question for you. But what is it you're most passionate about fighting?
Well, I'm most passionate about fighting what I'd call lies and corruption. The left and Democrats are lying to us. So think about it this way. I heard, forget who said this, but if they can convince you that we have multiple genders, there are more than just a male and a female, they can convince you of anything. They can take anything from you. It's like 1984, George Orwell's book, right? If they can, and what's really stunning about that is they don't care if you really believe it. In fact, they know you don't believe it, but they're going to make you say it. They're going to make you say there are 32 or 46 genders, whatever the number is now.
Right.
Because that is a mind control. That is a human control mechanism that they know works if they can break you down to do
Right.
that. So I think we need to get back to understanding objective truths. These people on the left are attacking objective truth. We have two genders, as someone I know says, who's a farmer. There are bulls and there are cows. Period. That's it. Right? There are males and there are females.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
We need to get back to that objective truth. Then I think we need to fight corruption, and we need to fight it at every level. It's everywhere. And critical race theory is a lie. Right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We know it's a lie. The 1619 Project is a lie, right? It's cherry picking to accomplish an objective that someone has that is a nefarious objective. And we've just got to nip it in the bud and stop it. And we need to speak up about it.
There you go. What will you do as a senator to unite more people?
I think it comes down to people who have a better perspective on their future, people who feel better about the future of the country or their lives, tend to be happier and tend to not be at odds with one another. I mean, for many, many decades, the birth rate in the Latino community has far exceeded every other community because they've been optimistic about the future, especially if they were immigrants from like Cuba or Mexico or Central America. They come here.
I want to take the time. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? They're like, this is great. And so they have kids. People don't have kids if they don't think they're going to be able to provide a good future for them. So I think we just need to get stuff out of the way, like we were talking about before.
And not that I don't want to help our immigrants or help people in other categories, but it tends to be the immigrants that get a little bit more things than Americans get. There are immigrants that get, they can start bad businesses and not pay taxes for a number of years. There's a lot of opportunities that they get. So, and they're, of course, they're getting free health care and whatnot for that. So there's a lot of advantages that they have that I think that we should make more accessible for Americans to have other opportunities that will help everybody prosper as a country. That's just my 2 cents. But are you going to be one of those people who get elected on values, the things that you're running on, and then, people vote for you, but after you get elected, you just kind of go with the flow? How are you going to avoid that? How are you going to fight against those that want you to go with the flow? I'll get your thoughts on that.
So that's a great question. That's one of those you asked a second time, and I understand why.
I would.
I understand why. I mean, so all I would say is if you this is why I like coming on shows like this where we have a long form
conversation.
That's why I
do it this way, yeah.
And not a 5-second. I mean, you ran for office, not a 5-minute stump speech where you're up with every candidate and it's like boom, boom, boom. And you don't even get to scratch the surface of issues or what you're all about. I will tell you that if you look back, if you went and talked to people and you check my references as if you were hiring me for a spot, you'd find that, number one, my word is my bond. I've done a lot of business over the years on a handshake. And values matter to me. One of the two people who bought the company from me, 90%, I sold 90% of my company back in 2019. One of the gentlemen who bought the Columbus market said to our bankers one time, Mark taught me not to always be looking for every penny that you could squeeze out of something, because by leaving a little bit on the table and letting someone else get a little more, you allow them to think that way about being a little less intense about the money and a little more intense about the mission you're trying to accomplish, and treating people well, and kind of getting back into this, I remember you did me a favor, I'll do you a favor.
Right,
so we support each other when we get into a bad spot, right? Examples like that. So I would say check those references, but I would also say that I would actively support term limits, single issue legislation or line item veto, hyper financial transparency. I prefer single issue legislation, right? Because, we're going to build a bridge and here's how much it's going to cost, up or down votes, right? I really, really dislike when politicians say, well, I had to vote for those red flag laws because they were part of this 2,800 page piece of legislation. And I wanted to make sure Ohio got $5 billion for a new bridge over the Ohio River.
Right.
And it gives them an out and it gives them an excuse. I would say, first of all, I'm not voting on any bill I don't read. If they don't give me time to read it, I'm just not voting, or I'm voting against it. Right. Second of all, we need to get that junk out of these bills. Mm-hmm. And so I guess people would have to look at my background and also what I'm doing right now. We're running a campaign and we're also fighting critical race theory, and we're doing something. We're taking action. We're fighting corruption in the Ohio Republican Party, arguably one of the most corrupt Ohio, state Republican parties. Mm. I'm speaking out against it. I'm willing to take the slings and arrows that other people won't take, because God has blessed me. And this will get to the third piece. I've got a rock solid faith in God. I always have. I always will. My father and my mother were my mentors. My dad passed away a few years ago. The most solid in his faith man I've ever met on the face of the earth. Okay. So I just, in my soul, I can't do the kind of things you're talking about in terms of doing the bait and switch kind of thing. The other thing I've committed to is we're going to take a staff to Washington that hasn't been there before. Mm. I am not picking the same people out of that codependent cesspool of corruption to work with me. Right. We may have one or two people that understand the process, but they are not going to be sitting around the table helping us make decisions. Right. They are going to be process oriented. How do we get this legislation written? How do we get it introduced? What's the process? That kind of thing. Because you can't, You know the old rule that you're going to be the average of the 5 or 6 people you spend the most time with. I think I'm not going there to make friends, but I don't want to spend time with these people outside of the office. You know what I
You're going
mean?
there to do business.
Right. And luckily, I've got my daughter and son-in-law who live just an hour outside of DC.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to suggest I'm moving in with them, but I will always be able to get away. Even in the evening when being pressed by people I don't want to be with, I'm just going to be like, I'm out of here. Because I do believe that associating with those people too much can be really bad. I do not believe that associating with these folks and socializing with them outside of the work environment is a positive thing. People say, "Oh, you need to build, team building skills, and you need to compromise, and you need to be bipartisan." That's what we've been saying for half a century, and look where it's gotten us. I'm sorry. I'll spend time with people if they want to have constructive discussions leading to positive, effective solutions. Otherwise, no, thank you.
I love it. So you brought up red flag laws. That's a big one on my topic, or a big one on my mind, rather. I'm a Second Amendment guy. I'm a strong Second Amendment guy. So are you going to do everything you can to protect our Second Amendment?
Yeah, I've already said I believe that it's given to us in the Second Amendment by God as a God-given right to possess firearms, but I also think that we've got the right to constitutional carry anywhere in the United States right now.
There you go.
And that we just need to stop fooling around with this. And we need to just make it happen, right? Open, concealed, anywhere, no permit. Okay?
What about training?
Well,
in Louisiana, we just had a big issue where we didn't get constitutional carry because the general sentiment overall was that they wanted to have training involved in it.
Yeah.
Even
so
though
here's where I think the training should
the
start.
government didn't override it.
Yeah. Here's where I think the training should start. We should be mandating. We should be legislating. We should be doing whatever we have to do to make it a class in high school that every American takes on firearm and gun safety. We used to do this, by the way.
Right.
We need to go back to the future. Everyone needs to understand because, think about Joe Biden talking about, was it the AR-14 or 13 or 16?
Yeah, he had it wrong. If it was,
he couldn't even get AR-15 right? I think that would help people to better understand firearms and why we need them. Now, that also goes into civics training or education and the Constitution and why this is not about hunting, right? This is about being able to defend yourself from tyranny, the tyranny of the government, right?
But you know what this all, but it also comes down to, and I don't get a chance to make this point this often. It comes down to responsibility. When you teach things like gun safety, you teach responsibility. When you go back to putting shop or mechanics back in school, you teach people skills, but you also teach them responsibility.
Right.
There's a whole other set of skills, another skill set, if you will, that people get when they learn these types of things. And you don't realize it, but society today, we don't teach these things, and people aren't as self-reliant as they need to be.
I will tell you, I learned more life lessons from my 2 shop teachers in middle school.
Right.
Or was it high school? No, middle school. Rick Vespi and Mr. Bizignano. Okay. They taught me more about through metal shop and wood shop. They taught me so much about life, responsibility, and appreciating what you have in terms of the caring for the tools, making sure you were doing the proper maintenance, cleaning up and things like that. There is more to this kind of education than just the actual production of a product or building something.
Well, I think
so. I'm right there with you.
I'm gonna start wrapping us up on this statement, which is that back in the day, there was a lot of opportunities for people to learn how to use their hands, use their skills, teach them skills, because a lot of kids' education, a college degree, going on to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a CPA isn't what they're cut out to be. Everybody's different. We all are different. We have to be able to relish in the fact that we all have different skills that we can bring to society to make it a better, more, more diverse place, if you will. And
Right.
so when you take shop, those are the skills out of school, you're limiting what the avenues that children can take or that young adults can take. And that's why I believe that we have a whole another set of our population that's not being they're not having their skills perfected, and they get just kind of kicked to the wayside. So
Right.
I want to give you the opportunity to wrap up. Do you have give you a minute to kind of wrap up? We've been scrolling your website at the bottom the whole time, your Facebook page, on how people can get a hold of you. But do you have any parting words, Mark, before we let everybody go on this?
So here's what I would say. What you see with me is what you get. Now, there are people around the country that probably think, well, he's a candidate for Senate in Ohio. Why do I care about that? Well, they should care about it because we've got to take the Senate back. So they should care that I'm successful in my mission and that other citizen candidates around the country are successful in their mission. So what I would say is help get my name out and support me if you can. That way, monetarily, fine. If you want to, that's great. But I'm not the guy that's going to be begging for money, looking to spend $10 or $15 million on a campaign. I think we've got to get money out of politics. And I'd be hypocritical saying that and then trying to run a campaign based solely on money. But the second piece of this is we have got to support what I call MAGA, America First citizen candidates around the country, everywhere. We need to support them. We need to support them by getting their name out there. If we have the resources, we need to support them financially. I'm talking in the House. I'm talking in the Senate. I'm talking in the governor's seats, everywhere. We need to take our country back. We need to take it back at every level. School boards, county commissioners, state government, federal government, everywhere. We are on the precipice of going somewhere we don't want to go. I believe the best years for America are ahead of us. As I said, I'm the eternal optimist, and I know we'll get there, especially if we've got God behind us. And we just need to all get together and focus on this mission of doing away with evil and getting back to objective truth.
What about one? Well, I want to take one more question. What about election integrity? Will you do what it takes for us to have safe, secure, accurate, and accessible elections for everybody?
Yes, I think that what we need to do there is we need to go back to the future again. We need to go back to what worked: paper ballots and hand counting.
Love it. That's all I need to know.
Or paper ballots.
You got me at paper ballots.
Yeah. Or paper ballots, and we could count them with the counters, but I'm talking about tabulators. I'm not talking about ballot marking machines. It's going to be piece of paper. You put the mark on it, and it's there, and it's kept forever, Bill.
And
right.
People get mad because they say, "Oh, you want us to go back in time, and we're in a digital world. We should have digital machines." Well, the problem is with digital machines is they're getting hacked into. Right. I'm not going to go into that here. I do a lot of shows on that. I just want to make sure that you're doing what it takes to have a safe, secure, accurate, accessible elections.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is, to your point, the other reason why I think interviews of this is important. I'm in Louisiana. You're in Ohio, although I do have relatives in Ohio.
Where are they?
By the way, they're on Akron, in Cleveland.
Yep.
But I think it's important because interviewing you might give somebody in Arizona, Florida, wherever they are in our country, and say, hey, you know what? I like that candidate, Mark Pukita, because he said this, this, and this. And they might be able to communicate that to another candidate elsewhere who can adopt policies where we can all work together. Mark, I want to thank you very much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And remind our listeners, they're on Facebook, YouTube watching this. This is going to be on Rumble. It's also going to be on any podcast app. and it's all going to be found at William Wallace for America. And I want to thank you very much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I can't do this with name recognition without people like you, Bill. So thank you very much and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Mark. You too. I'm in the broadcast. I'll talk to you in a few minutes.
Okay.
And again, have a great night. Everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in, and share the video and share the word about Mark Pukita in Ohio. Have a great night.